Jackson Rivers had expected many things when he arrived at Nova Sanctum sterile corridors. Perfect architecture, the cold efficiency of a society obsessed with genetic optimization. What he hadn't expected was to find himself descending to engineering. Deck 7 at 3 in the morning, drawn by curiosity and something deeper he couldn't quite name. The lower levels of the station hummed with a different energy than the pristine upper sectors. Here, function trumped form, and the exposed conduits and machinery created an industrial beauty that felt more honest than the calculated perfection above. The air carried the scent of ozone and recycled atmosphere. Tinged with the metallic tang of hard work, he found Engineering Bay 12 easily enough. Following the soft blue glow emanating from within, Zara sat cross-legged on the floor beside a massive power coupling, her luminescent veins casting shifting patterns across the walls as she worked. She'd removed her standard tissue coveralls, revealing arms and shoulders traced with the same ethereal light. The sight took his breath away. "You came," she said without looking up, her voice carrying that subtle harmonic undertone that made his chest tighten. "I said I would." Jackson settled himself on a nearby crate, careful not to disturb her work. "What are you working on?" Recalibrating the fusion reactor's magnetic containment field. Her fingers moved with practiced precision over the control interface. "It's delicate work. The margin for error is..." She paused, glancing at him. "Why am I explaining this? Most people don't actually want to know." "I'm not most people," Jackson replied, "and I find intelligence attractive." Zara's bioluminescence flickered, and she ducked her head. Don't what? Don't say things like that. Don't make me think." She trailed off, focusing intently on her work. Jackson studied her profile, the delicate curve of her jaw, the way her modified eyes caught and reflected light like stars. "Don't make you think what? That this could be something it's not." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "That someone like you could actually be interested in someone like me." "Someone like me?" Jackson leaned forward. "Zara, look at me." Reluctantly, she turned to face him. In the blue glow of her bioluminescence, her features were otherworldly, beautiful in a way that transcended the artificial perfection of Nova Sanctum's elite. "I'm nobody special," he said quietly. "I'm a dirt digger from a backwater colony, fascinated by old things and lost civilizations. I have scars from childhood accidents that were never corrected, asymmetrical features that would horrify your counselors, and I snore when I sleep on my back." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You snore terribly. My last research partner complained about it for 3 months straight." He grinned. "The point is, I'm as far from genetically perfect as they come, but here's what I've learned studying cultures across the galaxy: perfection is sterile. It's safe and predictable and ultimately empty. Life, real life, comes from the unexpected combinations, the beautiful accidents, the courage to be different." Zara's luminescent patterns pulsed in a rhythm he was beginning to recognize as her emotional response. The genetic modification wasn't supposed to happen, she said. "My parents were both pure-strain humans. The alien DNA came from contaminated equipment in the lab where I was conceived. A mistake. The best things in the universe are often mistakes," Jackson said. "The heavy elements that make up our bodies were forged in the heart of dying stars, cosmic accidents that made life possible. Every evolutionary leap was a mutation, an error in genetic replication that turned out to be an advantage." "You sound like a scientist." "I am a scientist, and as a scientist, I can tell you that diversity isn't just beautiful, it's essential for survival." He gestured around them. "This station, for all its perfection, is fragile. One major crisis, one unexpected challenge, and their genetic uniformity could be their downfall. But you..." He met her eyes. "You represent adaptability, evolution." In action, Zara set down her tools and moved closer, her bioluminescence painting them both in shifting blue light. "Why are you here, Jackson, really?" "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since yesterday." The admission came out more roughly than he'd intended. "Because when I look at you, I see something extraordinary that this place refuses to acknowledge. Because I think you're brilliant and beautiful and brave. And I wanted to know if you felt even a fraction of what I'm feeling." "I feel it," she whispered. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of hoping of believing this could be real. Her voice cracked slightly. I've spent my whole life being told I'm wrong, that I'm a mistake, that should be grateful for the chance to exist. And now you're here, looking at me like you're perfect exactly as you are. She nodded, unable to speak. Jackson reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the faint luminescent patterns along her cheekbones. You are perfect, Zara. Not despite your differences, but because of them. When their lips met, it was gentle at first, tentative. Then Zara's arms came up around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of longing and loneliness finally finding an answer. Her bioluminescence flared brighter, bathing them in ethereal light. I've never, she began when they broke apart, breathless. Never been kissed like that. Like I mattered. Jackson's heart clenched. You matter to me more than you know. They spent the next several hours talking, sharing stories of their different worlds. Jackson told her about the outer colonies, where genetic diversity was celebrated, rather than feared, where children grew up learning that their differences made them valuable rather than shameful. Zara spoke of her childhood on Nova Sanctum, the quiet cruelty of a society that tolerated her existence, but never accepted it. I've always wondered what it would be like, she said as they sat side by side, watching the stars through a small viewport. To live somewhere else, to be someone else. You don't need to be someone else, Jackson said, his hand finding hers. You just need the chance to be yourself without apology. Is that possible, here? Jackson squeezed her fingers. I don't know, but I'd like to find out, with you. As the station's artificial dawn cycle began, painting the engineering bay in warm, golden light, Zara's bioluminescence gradually dimmed to its resting state. She looked ethereal in the morning glow, like something from a dream he didn't want to wake from. I have to go, she said reluctantly. The day shift will be starting soon. When can I see you again? Tonight. The hope in her voice was unmistakable. Same time, I'll be here. As she gathered her tools and prepared to leave, Jackson caught her hand. Zara, yes, thank you for trusting me with this, with you. She smiled, the first truly unguarded smile he'd seen from her. Thank you for seeing me. After she left, Jackson remained in the engineering bay, surrounded by the honest hum of machinery and the lingering scent of ozone. He thought about the research that had brought him here, the ancient artifacts he'd come to study. But increasingly, his real discovery felt like it was just beginning. He'd found something on Nova Sanctum that no amount of genetic optimization could create, a connection that transcended the artificial boundaries of perfection, and he had no intention of letting it go. The bioluminescent veins running along Zara Vex's arms pulsed with an irregular rhythm, casting shifting blue patterns across the maintenance console. In the sterile perfection of Nova Sanctum, where genetic purity was law and physical uniformity was gospel, her bioluminescence was a constant reminder of her otherness. The modification had been an accidental laboratory error during her prenatal development that left her with alien DNA spliced into her human genome. She pressed her palm against the cool metal of the life support regulator, feeling the station's heartbeat through the vibrations. Down here in Engineering Deck 7, surrounded by the honest hum of machinery and the reliable pulse of power conduits, she could almost forget the whispers that followed her through the upper levels. Almost system integrity at 97%, she murmured to herself, logging the readings with practiced efficiency. Her voice carried a slight harmonic undertone, another gift from her altered genetics that made the station's elite uncomfortable. Beautiful, some had called it in private moments before remembering themselves and falling silent. The engineering bay stretched around her like a metallic cathedral, all gleaming surfaces and precisely arranged equipment. Nova Sanctum prided itself on perfection in all things, from the flawless symmetry of its architecture to the genetically optimized citizens who walked its pristine corridors. Zara's workspace was tucked away in the deepest part of the station, where the imperfect could serve without being seen. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Incoming transmission, the station's AI announced in its melodious voice. Priority maintenance request from Residential Sector 5. Zara's luminescent patterns flickered faster, a stress response she couldn't control. Residential Sector 5 housed the genetic elite, the families whose bloodlines had been refined over generations to achieve perfect human specimens. They rarely acknowledged her existence, preferring to submit their requests through intermediaries. Rather than interact directly with someone like her, she accepted the transmission, and Counselor Vega's assistant appeared on her screen, a young man with the flawless features and golden ratio proportions that marked him as third generation. Optimized. His eyes briefly registered distaste as he took in her appearance before sliding away. Engineer Vex, he said, his voice carefully neutral. There's a malfunction in the atmospheric controls for the counselor's private quarters. The air recycling system is producing unusual sounds. I'll investigate immediately, Zara replied. Already gathering her tools, she'd learned long ago not to keep the elite waiting, even for minor inconveniences that the journey to Residential Sector 5 required. Taking 3 transport pods and passing through to security checkpoints. At each stop, she endured the same routine, the scanner's harsh beep as it registered her genetic markers, the guards' momentary hesitation as they processed her clearance codes, the subtle way other passengers shifted away from her. The counselor's quarters occupied an entire level of the residential tower, with floor-to-ceiling viewports offering a spectacular view of the Helix Nebula beyond. Zara had worked on these systems before. She knew every pipe, every circuit, every component that kept this luxurious space habitable. The malfunction was in the tertiary air circulation unit, a relatively simple fix that could have been handled by any of the sector's maintenance crew. But those crew members were all genetically pure, and genetic purity, apparently, was more important than competence. She located the problem quickly, a loose coupling in the air filtration array that was creating harmonic vibrations. As she worked, her bioluminescent veins brightened in concentration, casting ethereal patterns across the pristine walls. The repair took less than 20 minutes, but she found herself lingering, drawn to the view of space beyond the viewports. Magnificent, isn't it? Zara spun around, her toolkit clattering to the floor. A man stood in the doorway, clearly human, but not from Nova Sanctum. His features lacked the mathematical precision of the genetically optimized, instead carrying the natural variations that her society had bred out generations ago. His dark hair was slightly unkempt, his clothing practical rather than fashionable, and his eyes were looking at her without the usual mixture of disgust and fascination. He was seeing her as a person, not a genetic aberration. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping into the room with a slight smile. "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Jackson Rivers, from the Terran Archaeological Institute. I've been granted quarters here while I conduct research on the station." "Zara Vex," she replied automatically, then immediately regretted giving her name. Most residents preferred not to know the identities of the maintenance staff, especially impure ones. "The engineer," Jackson said, nodding appreciatively. "I've heard about your work. The efficiency ratings for the station's life support systems are impressive. You must have quite a talent for this." Zara blinked in surprise. No one had ever complimented her work before, at least not directly. "It's just maintenance," she said cautiously. "Just maintenance." Jackson moved to stand beside her at the viewport, his attention focused on the nebula rather than her appearance. "You're literally keeping thousands of people alive in the vacuum of space. I'd say that's rather extraordinary." Her bioluminescent veins pulsed brighter, responding to emotions she couldn't quite identify. "You're not from here," she observed. "No, I'm from the outer colonies. We have a different perspective on what makes someone valuable." He glanced at her then, taking in her glowing patterns without flinching. "On my world, we believe diversity makes us stronger. Your modifications, they're beautiful." The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Beautiful. Not aberrant. Not impure. Not wrong. Beautiful. "I should go," Zara said quietly, gathering her tools with hands that trembled slightly. "The repair is complete." "Of course," Jackson said, but something in his voice suggested he was reluctant to see her leave. "Perhaps, if you have time, I'd be interested in learning more about the station's systems. My research involves understanding how different cultures approach the relationship between technology and society." Zara paused at the threshold, looking back at this stranger who saw her differently than anyone else ever had. In his eyes, she glimpsed a possibility she'd never dared imagine, that maybe, somewhere in the universe, being different wasn't a curse to be hidden. Level 7. She said softly, Engineering Bay 12. I'm usually there during the night shift. As the door closed behind her, Zara's reflection caught in the polished surface, and for the first time in her life, she didn't immediately look away from her own fractured mirror. Counselor Thane Obsidian prided himself on maintaining order. In a society built on genetic perfection and social harmony, disorder was not just undesirable, it was dangerous, which was why the surveillance report on his desk filled him with cold fury. The holographic display showed clear images, the human researcher, and the genetic aberrant known as Zara Vex, meeting repeatedly in the lower engineering levels, talking, touching, and much worse, displaying signs of romantic attachment that could undermine everything Nova Sanctum represented. Thane's perfectly symmetrical features remained impassive as he reviewed the footage, but inside, calculation and disgust warred for dominance. At 43 orbital cycles, he was the youngest counselor in Nova Sanctum's history. His rise to power built on an unwavering commitment to genetic purity and social stability. His own enhancement portfolio was extensive optimized intelligence, perfect physical proportions, emotional regulation that allowed him to make difficult decisions without sentiment clouding his judgment. The irony wasn't lost on him that his greatest strength, his enhanced emotional control, made it impossible for him to understand the connection he was witnessing between the human and the aberrant. Love was a concept he comprehended intellectually, but had never experienced personally. It was inefficient, unpredictable, and ultimately destructive to social order. Surveillance Officer Kane, he spoke to the air, knowing the station's AI would route his voice appropriately. Yes, counselor. The response came immediately through his neural implant. Schedule a meeting with the human researcher, Jackson Rivers. Administrative matter regarding his research parameters. 1 hour. Acknowledged. Thane dismissed the holographic display and activated his personal grooming ray. Mirrors emerged from the walls, reflecting his flawless appearance from multiple angles as automated systems adjusted his clothing and ensured every detail met perfection standards. He would need to be particularly impressive for this encounter, authority made manifest in genetic superiority. 50-8 minutes later, Jackson Rivers entered Thane's office with the casual confidence of someone who had never been told he was genetically inadequate. The contrast between them was stark. Thane's mathematical perfection against Jackson's natural asymmetries, enhanced intelligence against unmodified human cognition, emotional regulation against whatever chaotic feelings drove unoptimized humans. Dr. Rivers, Thane began, not offering a seat. Your research progress has been noted. Thank you. Counselor, I appreciate the station's cooperation with my work. Indeed, however, there are concerns about your methodology. Thane activated a wall display showing Jackson's official research proposal. Your stated objective is to study pre-enhancement Talisari artifacts. Yet surveillance indicates you've been spending considerable time in the engineering sections, far from the archaeological storage areas. Jackson's expression didn't change, but Thane's enhanced perception caught the micro-expressions that betrayed elevated stress. I believe in comprehensive research, counselor. Understanding how a society functions in the present helps contextualize its past. Comprehensive research. Thane's voice carried a hint of disdain. Is that what you call your repeated meetings with engineering specialist Vex? The slight tightening around Jackson's eyes confirmed what the surveillance had suggested. This wasn't merely professional interest. Zara is highly knowledgeable about the station's systems. Her insights have been valuable. Zara. Thane let the name hang in the air. How familiar? Tell me, Dr. Rivers, are you aware of Specialist Vex's genetic status? I'm aware that your society considers her different. Where I come from, we call that diversity. Where you come from, Thane repeated, moving closer with predatory grace, is a collection of backwater colonies that have failed to achieve even basic genetic optimization. Your perspective on genetic aberrance is naive. Jackson's jaw tightened. My perspective is that intelligence, skill, and character matter more than genetic purity. An admirable sentiment, if scientifically unsound. Thane circled behind his desk, his movements calculated to project dominance. Allow me to educate you about Specialist Vex's condition. The alien genetic material integrated into her genome carries significant risks: unpredictable mutations, potential mental instability, possible reproductive complications that could affect future generations. She seems perfectly stable to me, does she? Thane activated another display, showing Zara's medical records, elevated stress responses, irregular bioluminescent patterns indicating emotional dysregulation, documented incidents of social isolation and depression. These are not the markers of a healthy individual. These are the markers of someone who's been told her entire life that she's worthless. Jackson shot back, his composure finally cracking. Maybe the problem isn't her genetics, maybe it's how you treat her. Thane smiled, a precise expression that conveyed superiority without warmth. Your emotional response proves my point. Unregulated humans form irrational attachments that cloud judgment. You've developed feelings for this aberrant, haven't you? Her name is Zara. And yes, I care about her. Then you're putting her in danger. Thane's voice sharpened. Your presence on this station is temporary, Dr. Rivers. Your research will conclude, and you will return to your colonies. But Specialist Vex must continue to exist here. Under our authority, your romantic entanglement with her creates complications. What kind of complications? Thane returned to his seat, steepling his fingers. The kind that result in reassignment to less pleasant duties. Remote maintenance on the outer hull, perhaps, where exposure to radiation might exacerbate her existing genetic instabilities, or transfer to one of our research facilities, where her unique physiology could contribute to our understanding of genetic aberrations. The threat was clear, and Jackson's hands clenched into fists. You can't do that. I can do whatever is necessary to maintain social stability. Thane's enhanced emotional regulation kept his voice perfectly level. However, I am not unreasonable. I'm prepared to offer an alternative. I'm listening. Complete your research efficiently and depart Nova Sanctum ahead of schedule. Cease all personal contact with Specialist Vex immediately. In return, she retains her current position and comfortable existence in the engineering levels. You're asking me to abandon her. I'm offering to protect her from the consequences of your attachment. Thane leaned forward. You claim to care for her, Dr. Rivers. Prove it by ensuring her safety. Jackson was silent for a long moment, conflict evident in his unenhanced features. And if I refuse, then you will discover how fragile the privileges of genetic aberrance truly are. Thane's smile never wavered. You have 24 hours to decide. I suggest you consider what's truly in Specialist Vex's best interests. After Jackson left, Thane reviewed the surveillance footage once more. The way the aberrant's bioluminescence flared in the human's presence, the careful way he touched her face, the obvious emotional connection between them. It was fascinating from an anthropological perspective, even as it disgusted him on a fundamental level. He understood intellectually that unenhanced humans were capable of forming powerful emotional bonds. What he couldn't comprehend was why anyone would choose such vulnerability, such irrationality, such chaos. His own existence was ordered, purposeful, efficient. He had never experienced longing or loss, never felt the desperate need for connection. That seemed to drive the pair he'd been observing, but he recognized its power, and power left unchecked was dangerous. Surveillance Officer Kane, he spoke again. Yes, Counselor, increase monitoring on both subjects. I want to know every word, every gesture, every meeting, and prepare a containment protocol for Specialist Vex, should it become necessary. Acknowledged. Thane deactivated his displays and returned to his other duties, managing genetic enhancement schedules, reviewing purity assessments, maintaining the perfect order that kept Nova Sanctum functioning. But part of his enhanced mind continued to analyze the problem of Jackson Rivers and Zara Vex. He had given the human a choice, but Thane's enhanced intelligence had already calculated the most likely outcomes. Emotional attachment would override rational self-interest. The human would choose the aberrant over discretion, and when that happened, Thane would do what he did best: eliminate the disorder threatening their perfect society. For the good of Nova Sanctum, he told himself, for the preservation of genetic purity and social stability. But deep in his enhanced mind, a question nagged at him one his emotional regulation couldn't quite suppress. What was it like to care for someone so much that you would risk everything? For them, what was it like to choose chaos over order, vulnerability over security, love over logic? He dismissed the thought immediately. Such questions were irrelevant to his purpose. He was Counselor Thane Obsidian, guardian of genetic perfection, protector of social order, and he would not allow to flawed individuals to undermine everything he had sworn to protect. Elder Mira Solon had been watching from the shadows long enough. At 93 orbital cycles, she was among the oldest residents of Nova Sanctum, old enough to remember when genetic modification was a choice rather than a mandate, when diversity was celebrated rather than feared. Her aged hands, deliberately left unenhanced to show the natural progression of time, trembled slightly as she made her way through the lower engineering levels. She found Zara exactly where she expected, hunched over a diagnostic terminal. In Engineering Bay 12, her bioluminescent patterns dim with distress. The young woman hadn't been eating properly, hadn't been sleeping. Love, Mira reflected with bitter irony, was taking its toll. Child, Mira said softly, announcing her presence. Zara looked up, startled. Recognition dawned slowly. Everyone on Nova Sanctum knew Elder Solon, though few had ever spoken to her directly. She was a relic of the old ways, tolerated rather than celebrated. Her presence a reminder of what their society had chosen to leave behind. Elder Solon. Zara stood quickly, uncertainty evident in her posture. I wasn't expecting. How can I help you? The question, dear one, is how I can help you. Mira moved closer, her keen eyes taking in Zara's appearance. You look like someone facing an impossible choice. Zara's bioluminescence flickered a stress response she couldn't control. I don't know what you mean, don't you? Mira settled herself on a nearby crate with the careful movements of someone whose joints had seen nearly a century of use. Jackson Rivers came to see me 3 hours ago. Quite distressed, he was. Something about having to choose between completing his research and protecting someone he cares about. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She sank back into her chair, her luminescent patterns pulsing erratically. He spoke to you about you, yes. About Counselor Obsidian's ultimatum. About a choice that shouldn't have to be made. Mira's voice carried decades of accumulated wisdom and regret. Tell me, child, what do you know about Nova Sanctum's history? The real history, not the sanitized version they teach in the education centers. I know we achieved genetic perfection through careful enhancement protocols, Zara recited automatically. I know we eliminated disease, extended lifespans, optimized physical and mental capabilities. Do you know what we lost in the process? Zara shook her head, confusion evident in her expression. Mira activated a small personal device, projecting holographic images into the air between them. The pictures showed Nova Sanctum from decades past, but it looked different. The people in the images displayed a range of physical characteristics that would be unthinkable in current society. Some showed signs of age, others bore the marks of accidents or genetic variations. Yet they appeared vibrant, alive in a way that current residents, for all their perfection, somehow weren't. These are my personal archives, Mira explained. Images from before the great enhancement, when genetic modification was optional, rather than mandatory. Look at their faces, child. Really look. Zara studied the projections, her enhanced eyes picking up details others might miss. They look happy, she said finally. Different, but happy. They were. We were. Mira's voice grew wistful. I was 27 when the enhancement mandate passed. Young enough to undergo the procedures, old enough to remember what we were before. I chose to keep my natural aging process, my unenhanced intelligence, my imperfect features. They tolerated my choice because I'd been a respected geneticist, instrumental in developing some of the very technologies they now worship. You're a geneticist. I was, before I became a living reminder of what we've lost. Mira gestured to another set of images, these showing genetic charts and scientific data. Do you want to know a secret, Zara? Your modifications aren't an accident. Zara's bioluminescence flared bright blue. What? The alien DNA integrated into your genome, it wasn't contamination. It was an experiment. My experiment. Mira's eyes met Zara's, unflinching. Your parents volunteered to participate in a study exploring beneficial xenogenetic integration. The goal was to create humans capable of thriving in environments hostile to unmodified genetics. The revelation hit Zara like a tsunami. You're saying, I was designed this way. Not designed, enhanced, but enhanced in a direction the Council later deemed unacceptable. Mira's voice carried decades of guilt and pride. When the enhancement mandate passed, all xenogenetic research was banned. Your parents were ordered to terminate the pregnancy or face exile. They chose to stay and hide the truth, claiming your modifications were an accident to protect both you and the research. Zara's hands trembled as she processed this information. All my life, I've been told I was a mistake, a genetic aberration to be ashamed of. You are exactly what I hoped you would be, proof that evolution doesn't require uniformity. Your bioluminescence isn't just beautiful, it's functional. Your enhanced cellular regeneration, your ability to process certain toxins that would kill unmodified humans, your natural resistance to radiation, these aren't flaws, they're advantages. Then why hide it? Why let me believe I was broken? Mira's expression grew sad. Because the society I helped create became something I never intended. We sought to eliminate genetic diseases, to enhance human potential. Instead, we created a culture that fears difference, that mistakes uniformity for perfection. She reached out, her aged hand covering Zara's glowing one. But you, child, represent hope, proof that diversity strengthens rather than weakens us. I don't feel strong, Zara whispered. I feel lost. Jackson makes me believe I could be something more, but if he leaves, then leave with him. The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Zara stared at the elder, wondering if she'd heard correctly. I can't leave Nova Sanctum. This is my home, is it? Or is it a prison that's convinced you to love your cage? Mira stood, moving to the small viewport that offered a view of the stars beyond. There's a whole galaxy out there, Zara. Worlds where your gifts would be celebrated, where genetic diversity is seen as strength rather than weakness. Even if I wanted to leave, how could I? My genetic status, my work contract, I still have some influence, despite my age and unconventional choices. Mira smiled, and for a moment, Zara glimpsed the brilliant scientist she must have been decades ago. I've been waiting for the right moment, the right person, to begin undoing some of the damage I helped create. Your relationship with young Jackson has provided that opportunity. What do you mean? I mean that tomorrow, when Counselor Obsidian expects Jackson to make his choice, he's going to discover that choices aren't always binary. Mira's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a plan long in the making. I've been preparing for this day for 30 years, gathering evidence, documenting the Council's overreach, building a network of those who remember what we've lost. A network. Did you think you were the only one who questioned the current order, the only one who felt trapped by artificial perfection? Mira activated another display, showing faces Zara recognized: engineers, medical technicians, even some junior administrators. There are dozens of us, child, all waiting for the right moment to act. Act how? By showing Nova Sanctum what they've really become, by revealing the lies they tell themselves about genetic purity, by proving that love and connection matter more than manufactured perfection. Mira turned back to Zara, her expression intense. But we need you and Jackson to be brave enough to take the first step. What kind of step? The kind that changes everything. Mira's smile was both gentle and revolutionary. Tomorrow, when the Council expects capitulation, we give them revelation instead. Are you ready to discover what you're truly capable of, Zara Vex? As Zara looked into the elder's eyes, she felt something shift inside her, a recognition that the choice before her wasn't between staying and leaving, between safety and risk. It was between accepting the lies she'd been told about herself and embracing the truth of what she could become. What do you need me to do? She asked, her bioluminescence beginning to pulse with renewed determination. Mira's smile widened. First, you need to find Jackson and convince him that running away isn't the only option. Then, tomorrow, you're going to stand before the council and show them what real genetic enhancement looks like. I don't understand. You will, Mira promised. By tomorrow evening, everyone on Nova Sanctum will understand what they've really lost in their pursuit of perfection. And you, my dear, will finally see yourself as I've always seen you, not as a beautiful accident, but as the future itself. The council chamber had never held so many people. Word had spread through Nova Sanctum's levels like wildfire: the genetic aberrant and the human researcher would face judgment, and Elder Solon had requested the right to present evidence on their behalf. What should have been a simple disciplinary hearing had transformed into something far more significant. Zara stood in the center of the chamber, no longer trying to hide her differences. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed in steady, confident rhythms, casting blue light across the polished floors. Beside her, Jackson's presence was a warm anchor, his hand occasionally brushing hers in subtle support. They had spent the night talking, planning, preparing for what Elder Solon had called the moment everything changes. Counselor Obsidian sat rigid in his chair, his perfect features arranged in an expression of controlled displeasure. The other 6 council members flanked him, their genetically optimized faces showing varying degrees of curiosity and concern. In the gallery above, hundreds of station residents watched with rapt attention. This hearing will come to order, Obsidian announced, his enhanced voice carrying easily through the chamber. We are here to address the violation of social protocols by research specialist Jackson Rivers and engineering specialist Zara Vex. If I may, Counselor, Elder Solon interrupted, rising from her seat in the front row. Despite her age, her voice rang clear and strong. I request the right to present evidence relevant to these proceedings. Obsidian's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. This is not a trial, Elder. It is a disciplinary hearing. Then let it become a trial. Mira replied, moving to stand beside Zara and Jackson. A trial of the principles that govern our society. She activated a projection device, filling the chamber with holographic displays of genetic data, historical records, and documentation spanning decades. The audience murmured as images of pre-enhancement Nova Sanctum appeared, citizens displaying natural human variation, thriving communities that celebrated rather than feared difference. Honorable counselors, Mira began, you are about to make a decision that will define not just the fate of these 2 individuals, but the soul of our civilization. Before you do, I ask that you consider what we have truly gained and lost in our pursuit of genetic perfection. Elder Solon, Counselor Vera interrupted, while your historical perspective is valued, it does not address the current situation. These individuals have violated clearly established social bond. Ares, have they? Mira smiled, and Zara recognized the expression from their conversation the day before, the look of someone about to reveal a carefully guarded truth. Or have they simply demonstrated what we've been too afraid to acknowledge? She gestured, and the displays shifted to show detailed genetic analysis not just of Zara, but of every council member, every resident of Nova Sanctum. The data was shocking in its implications. What you see here is 30 years of research. Mira announced, genetic diversity indices, adaptation capabilities, evolutionary potential. And what it shows is that our society is dying. Preposterous. Obsidian snapped, but uncertainty flickered in his enhanced eyes. Is it? Look at the fertility rates, the incidence of autoimmune disorders, the psychological instability that requires constant emotional regulation. Mira's voice grew stronger. We have created a population so genetically uniform that we've lost our ability to adapt, to grow, to truly live. She turned to face Zara directly. But Zara Vex represents something different. Something hopeful. With a gesture, Mira activated a new display showing Zara's complete genetic profile, not the abbreviated version in her official files, but the full scope of her modifications. Behold the future of human evolution, Mira declared, enhanced cellular regeneration that could extend healthy lifespans indefinitely, bioluminescent communication systems that could revolutionize how we interact with technology, radiation resistance that would allow survival in environments that would kill unmodified humans, toxin processing capabilities that could enable colonization of previously uninhabitable worlds, The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Zara felt hundreds of eyes upon her, but for the first time, they weren't looking at her with disgust or pity. They were looking at her with wonder. These modifications weren't accidents. Mira continued. They were the result of careful xenogenetic integration, designed to push human evolution in directions our current society lacks the courage to explore. You admit to illegal genetic experimentation. Obsidian's voice was sharp with accusation. I admit to seeing a future that extends beyond our current limitations. Mira's eyes blazed with conviction, and I'm not the only one. At her signal, figures began standing throughout the gallery: engineers, medical technicians, maintenance staff, even some junior administrators, dozens of people, all showing subtle signs of genetic variation that had been hidden, suppressed, or explained. Away, we are all here, counselors, Mira announced. The ones you've overlooked, the ones you've marginalized, the ones who carry the genetic diversity that could save our species. We've been waiting for the courage to speak. Today, Zara and Jackson have given us that courage. Jackson stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of his research and his conviction. I've studied dozens of civilizations across the galaxy, he said, and I can tell you that the ones that survive, that thrive, that reach for the stars, they're the ones that embrace diversity rather than fear it. Nova Sanctum stands at a crossroads. You can continue down the path of genetic uniformity and watch your society slowly suffocate, or you can choose evolution. And what do you propose? Counselor Vera asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Zara found her voice stronger than it had ever been. I propose we remember what we were meant to be, she said, her bioluminescence flaring brighter. Not perfect copies of an artificial ideal, but infinite variations on the theme of humanity. She moved to the center of the chamber, her light painting aurora-like patterns across the walls. I've spent my life being told I was wrong, that I was broken, that I was a mistake to be hidden away. But I'm not broken. I'm different, and difference is what drives evolution, what creates beauty, what makes love possible. She looked directly at Jackson, and the love between them was visible to everyone in the chamber. Not perfect, not calculated, but real and powerful and transformative. Jackson sees me as I am, she continued, not as a genetic aberration, but as a person worthy of love. That's what we're really fighting for here, the right to love beyond the boundaries of artificial perfection, the right to choose connection over conformity, the right to be human, Jackson added, taking her hand openly, defiantly. In all our messy, imperfect, beautiful variety, Counselor Obsidian stood, his enhanced features rigid with the effort of processing this challenge to everything. He believed, you ask us to abandon the principles that built this society, to embrace chaos over order. I ask you to choose life over stasis, Mira replied, to choose love over fear, to choose the future over the past. A long silence fell over the chamber. The council members looked at each other, communicating through subtle gestures and enhanced neural links. Finally, Counselor Vera spoke. The genetic data you've presented requires careful analysis. She said slowly, the implications of your research are significant. We propose a trial period, another counselor added, 6 months to study these findings, to evaluate the potential benefits of controlled genetic diversification. And in the meantime, Jackson asked. In the meantime, Vera continued, there will be no punishment for the relationship between Specialist Vex and Dr. Rivers. Indeed, their connection will be studied. As an example of successful inter-community bonding, Obsidian's face was a mask of controlled fury, but he was outnumbered. The other council members had seen the data, witnessed the testimony, felt the shift in the chamber's atmosphere. Change was no longer just possible, it was inevitable. Furthermore, Vera announced, we will be establishing a new research division, headed by Elder Solon, to explore the benefits of genetic diversity. Specialist Vex will serve as lead researcher, with Dr. Rivers as cultural liaison. The chamber erupted in cheers from the gallery, voices raised in celebration of a future that suddenly seemed possible. Zara felt tears streaming down her face as Jackson pulled her into his arms, her bioluminescence flaring in patterns of pure joy. We did it, she whispered against his chest. You did it, he corrected. You showed them who you really are. As the celebration continued around them, Mira approached with a smile that spoke of plans decades in the making finally coming to fruition. This is just the beginning, she told them. There's so much work to do, so many minds to change, so many people to help see themselves as they truly are. Zara nodded, still glowing with happiness and determination. Then let's begin. Months later, as Nova Sanctum underwent its gradual transformation into a society that celebrated rather than feared diversity, Zara and Jackson stood on the observation deck where they had first kissed. The space station hummed around them with new energy, the sound of a civilization choosing growth over stagnation, love over fear. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come here? Zara asked, her bioluminescent patterns painting gentle constellations across Jackson's skin. Every day, he replied, pulling her closer. And every day, I'm grateful I did. Not just Beck,